The day of my Master of Divinity graduation, the last thing I wanted to do was get out of bed. I wished I could just have my diploma mailed to me. I felt embarrassed and disoriented and just so not like myself. More than anything, I did not want to face that innocent but so loaded question. So, what are you doing next? Now, if we rewind to just 1 week before, everything had been so completely different. I was doing great, excited to be graduating. Everything felt like it was falling into place for me, exactly like it always had. My final semester in seminary was spacious. I savored my classes, and I enjoyed working part-time for an organization that I loved deeply and felt really called to serve. I got involved with a progressive, justice-focused Christian student organization early during my undergrad days. I loved it. I basically gave every spare minute of my time to it. All my friends were part of it, and all my mentors had been involved in the past. I got to go to incredible conferences around the world and meet simply inspiring people. So during my last semester in seminary, they were hiring someone to fill in part-time for this organization, and I got the job. And then it just seemed so perfect. I learned that they would be hiring someone full-time and that the position would start right after I graduated. It just felt so right. My friends and my mentors kept asking me, they kept saying, Sheryl, you're going to apply for this, right? I knew that I had the passion to pull me through the long hours and the little pay. It would put my progressive seminary education right to work. Plus, I knew this organization inside and out. I deeply admired those who had done the role in the past, and for some time, if I'll admit it, I'd been daydreaming about taking on the role myself. When the day came for the interview, it felt easy and really natural. I knew each person on the interview team really well. While I was waiting for them to call me with the news, I got everything in my life in order. Finished my coursework, wrapped up another job I had. I traveled to visit some friends while I still had the time. I was so ready. And then the call came. As you may be expecting by now, it was not the result I hoped for. They went with another candidate, and I didn't get the job. I went through all of the emotions you can imagine and then some. Shock, but also embarrassment. I had planned my whole life around this job, and I hadn't made a backup plan. I'd already left my other part-time job, and I hadn't gone through the church process to apply for a congregation. My partner, Kelly, had gotten a position in this city, all based on the assumption that I was going to be doing this job, that we were staying for this. I blamed myself so much, thinking I should have known better. I always had backup plans, but this had just felt too right. And yes, I had not only planned my short-term future, but also my long-term future. I thought this job would launch me, like my mentors who had been in the role in the past, to a similarly interesting and meaningful future. It felt like such a powerful lineage to join. But now what? Who was I if they wouldn't even let me do this? This meaning hard work for little pay out of my demonstrated love for this organization. I felt like such a fool. Felt like they were saying, maybe, yes, you're good enough to volunteer, but not to lead. Or maybe they just expected I would keep volunteering no matter what, so maybe I felt a little taken for granted. Maybe my new initiatives and consistent first replies to every email just weren't enough. I didn't know. I didn't feel like I knew anything anymore. And I definitely did not want to go to graduation and have to put on a brave face. I didn't want to see those looks of surprise when I had to say, no, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do next. Maybe this story resonates with you in some way. You too may have had your life turned upside down, and maybe by something far worse than not getting a job you wanted. There are so many experiences in life that can utterly disorient us, throw us into the metaphorical or the literal wilderness. And sometimes the scale of our feelings does not necessarily seem commiserate with reality. It might seem kind of small when we say it to others, but to us, it feels like the whole world is crashing down. A change like a senior pastor retiring from church ministry, it can be something like that. We expect church to be constant, week to week, year to year, generation to generation. A place we can turn to and return to, even as so much in our own lives might change. A place that can be a sanctuary from the tumult of the world. If you're feeling that way, if you're feeling thrown off by Reverend Penny's retirement, know that that is completely normal. Even though you may be happy for her, it makes sense to also be sad and nostalgic and thrown off and unsure. I certainly feel that way. I know and trust that it was the right decision for her, and I have deep faith in the board and this congregation and in whoever God is preparing right now to come and lead us next. But still, maybe it felt like things were just getting back to a bit of normalcy in the pandemic. But then this. I picked the scripture reading for today because it has been something I've really turned to and relied on in tumultuous moments. This passage assures us that everything on this earth and in this life changes, but we have God's love whose steadfastness does not change. We know that the things we see, how we see things, and even sight itself can change. But God's presence will endure, and we have a strong home that nothing can destroy. This passage also reminds us that we are a pilgrim people. We walk through life so often by faith. There's so much in the Bible that is about this kind of journey, going from the known into the unknown, and then kind of back home, but to a home that is changed, and as a people who have been changed by the experience. From the story of Adam and Eve in the garden, a place of deep home, who are cast out into the world with all of its hardship and strife, to the rest of the Bible, and even us today, trying to get back to that place of deep home. We have the Exodus story. The Israelite people sent out not from home, but from what they knew, into 40 long years of wandering before they reached that promised land. But not all of them made it, and those who did, they were changed. We have Jesus' disciples who experienced deep belonging with him, but then they lost him in the most tragic way, only to be reunited but briefly, for him to leave again so that they could be sent out at Pentecost to serve and create places of radical home in every time and every place. Much of the Bible and the experience of faith and life itself has these components of leaving and coming, of journeying out and returning home. I think some stories are more stories of exile, and others are more stories of pilgrimage. Now, I don't believe there's a clear line between the two, but for me, I think exile is more what happens to you, and pilgrimage is what you make of it. It's something that you can choose. Exile takes away meaning, and pilgrimage creates meaning. Now, I don't want to suggest that everyone should just change their mindset and that it's your responsibility to think positively and turn every exile into a pilgrimage, whatever life does to you. God does not give us exiles as a test, and God does not want us to suffer. But at the same time, there can be profound spiritual learning that can come when we're sent out and far away from what we've known. These experiences can help us learn to walk by faith and not by sight. Even when we can't see or even imagine that next step, we can trust that God, in and through God's beloved community, has already built that next step, even if we can't see it there. Even though exiles can, in some cases, become pilgrimages towards spiritual insight, we have to find that for ourselves. And know that it isn't always possible and it won't always happen. The most difficult and annoying things that people said to me when I didn't get that job was, "Oh, Sheryl, you will grow so much from this experience." Even, "Don't worry, I'm sure something else will work out soon," wasn't that helpful. We need to be deeply present with people in their moments of exile, to walk alongside one another in the depths of confusion and despair, not minimizing, not reframing. We need to show true compassion. The word passion meaning suffering, and come meaning with. So compassion, suffering together, suffering with one another. Even though we may have gained so much from something similar in our own lives, our pilgrimages are very much our own. I know that I didn't glean as much wisdom as I could have from that exile experience that year I graduated. Even though it made me ask some deep questions about who I was also really fortunate that it was such an easy experience compared to that of so many others. I'm so fortunate that within weeks, I had a brand new job completely lined up, also in the area of faith and social justice. So when people ask me what I did after seminary, I can pretend that other job was my plan the whole way along. While I'm deeply grateful, I know it doesn't always work out like that. Please know the last thing I'm saying is just have faith, it will work out. I don't want to pretend that exile-like experience didn't happen. I don't want to forget trying to take all the religious things off my resume to try to get some kind of job, any kind of job, especially in worlds where religious things are not so much assets but liabilities. I didn't want to forget having to ask those big questions about who I was or what I was doing. I don't want to forget feeling kinship with other people who have experienced unemployment or who have felt cast out and rejected by beloved communities. I don't want to forget having to rely more deeply on others and more deeply on God. And even though the new job that I got in the end was really good, as luck will have it, it was located in the very same office as the original organization that I applied to. Actually, the person in the not at all soundproof cubicle, so not at all soundproof cubicle right next to mine was that other candidate, the person who got their job. All day, I listened to her make phone calls and do the job that I felt so sure had been destined to be mine. I answered her questions and tried to help her get oriented. I would be lying if I didn't say it was kind of awkward. But it felt like God was saying, "Sheryl, don't forget this experience. This is your pilgrimage. You need to work each day to integrate failure into your self-understanding. Don't forget this happened. Help freely and don't hold a grudge. Success in life is not guaranteed, and hard work does not come back with a money-back guarantee. You are not more deserving than anyone else." When I look back at that time, it did feel like my so-called earthly tent was destroyed. Those weeks without a job felt very much like I was walking by faith and not by sight. I had to lean on others to guide me. I had to ask for help in ways that I had never had to before. Sharing what happened was embarrassing, but it did allow others to help, and it allowed others to connect and share their stories. I leaned on God, and I felt like my prayers were more honest and more visceral than ever before. And it felt like a spiritual practice to be reminded daily that I did not get that job and to try to continue to be gracious, to think of the big picture, to show up and just keep going. As a congregation, we are entering a time where we are walking by faith and not by sight. We don't know what the future will be like exactly. We may feel exiled from the known and cast out into the unknown. But we can trust that despite these outward uncertainties, it is possible for our faith to become stronger. We can find ourselves drawn closer to one another as we reach out for support and share what is true. This time can truly become a pilgrimage that we walk together. As individuals, you too may be walking by faith and not by sight in your own life. There may be major uncertainties you face. There may be deep hurts and even fear. If you're going through something big right now, please do reach out. You don't have to pretend to have it all together. I know I'm not always great at that, but I do know that it makes a difference to be real. It allows others to be real with us when we're willing to model that vulnerability and share what is really true. Life, I think, so often is a winding road between consolation and desolation, of being home and then going away by choice or maybe not by choice, and then trying to get back to some place of home again. Or it can be more of an experience of starting out adrift, but knowing through faith that there must be a place of home out there for you somewhere. I don't think it's surprising that so many world religions involve pilgrimage, from Islam to Christianity to Buddhism. We also know that music lovers and history buffs, hikers, those who are curious about their family heritage, many people take pilgrimages as they seek deeper connection and insight into the things that they care about most. And in addition to those more official pilgrimages, life so often hands us opportunities for pilgrimage, whether we want them or not. So, as you go forth on your own path this day, may you know and trust deeply that you are never alone, that God has gone before you and will be with you at every step, that even when you feel furthest from anything that feels right, the next steps will come, and many pilgrims have walked that path before. Sometimes we can walk by sight, but when sight fails, faith remains. Let us give thanks to God for the places of home that we do find in this life. And when we cannot find a home, may we have faith that we will one day find ourselves fully at home in God. May we glean the wisdom that we can from our exiles and our pilgrimages, and do what we can to soften the roads and smooth the paths of those who will come after us. Let us bind together ever closer as a pilgrim people, and may we walk together this road, going forth, guided by faith, if not sight. We know that God sees us, even when we cannot see God. For this and so much more, we give thanks. Amen.